Kaboom!
The board is set and the pieces are moving. What's up, beautiful people? Supercliff here, and thanks for tuning in on today's brand new episode. And today we're going to continue on with Donny Cates' Venom. So let's get hippity-hoppity to it. I will never do that again. I apologize. Anyways, so Venom. Where we left off last time was actually, it was pretty epic. We had Miles Morales as Spider-Man and Venom decide that in order to save the city, they need to put their differences aside for like 5 minutes, agreeing that this flying asshole needs to be taken out. And the best way to do that, well, is to kill it from the inside. Kind of like that big giant riftworm from Gears of War 2. Great game. Back to Venom. We now see our heroes inside the belly of the beast. Literally, no pun intended. And this here, my friends, is where the story, it gets magnificent. Because we're introduced to this guy who looks like an elf who's done a lot of drugs. He hasn't. We'll get to what he is very soon. And he's holding Miles by the head and he says, "Child, does this thing belong to you?" And while the army outside is shooting up the dragging symbiote creature, this being constitutes itself, formulate fists, and start destroying all the airborne helicopters hanging around above the city skyline. And where Eddie's like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're killing tons of people, and for what purpose?" This being just looks at Eddie and says, "Fragile." So basically he's an ass. And within mere seconds, the being just consumes Eddie's symbiote, and Eddie's symbiote has no chance in pulling away or fighting back. Almost like a direct order, Eddie's symbiote doesn't have a choice. It's like, I'm being pulled. I don't know what to do. Game over, man. Game over. God, I wish the Venom symbiote would just say that. Bill Paxton, R.I.P. So following that, the being basically makes like a symbiote bubble because, you know, the music's getting way too loud up in here. Eddie keeps asking, "Who are you?" And then the being responds by saying, "Child, what has been done to you?" And while this being is talking to Eddie's symbiote, Eddie, feeling ignored because, well, he is being ignored, just continues to yell at the guy. And eventually the being's like, "This guy's annoying. Your host is just so blah." And he's actually speaking to the symbiote. And this is cool because throughout Marvel Comics, after spending years and years with Venom, the character, and the concept of how symbiotes work, you know, whether it's Eddie Brock, Flash Thompson, Peter Parker, or Matt Gargan's Scorpion, the host of the symbiote seems to be the one who's calling the shots, and the symbiote is just providing the powers. But here, this guy is referring to the symbiotes as the Alpha rather than the second in command. And it's really bumming out Eddie Brock. And I'm really digging how this guy is just being a complete asshole. And so with that, as Eddie just keeps yelling for attention, the being chokes him and reveals to Eddie that his name is Knull and that he is the god of the symbiotes. Ooh. So yeah, he's got a badass title. And it's here where Knull starts giving Eddie a monologue about who he is, where he's from, and this is where it gets really cool because essentially Knull is from the deep vacuums of dark space. He just hibernates until billions of years ago when the Celestials came by and they were like, "Hey, this area, it's kind of boring. Let's get this party started." Knull's like, "That's bullshit. This is my area. What are you doing?" And so he declares war on the Celestials. However, the Celestials kick his ass only for them to banish him further into the voids of space. And this only angers Knull. And Knull's like, "Well, I want my revenge." And so he builds the Necro Sword, which, if you guys haven't read Thor God of Thunder, go ahead and check out my videos, for they are great and a good time. That's the weapon in which Gore the God Butcher uses to kill all the gods. And here, Knull is doing the exact same thing. Now, what happens next is really cool because Donny Cates connects Jason Aaron's Thor God of Thunder even further because we've already seen Knull. We, the reader, just weren't aware of it. So let's take a look to the past. Back in Gore's origin story, a god and a warrior in black armor crash landed on Gore's homeworld. Knull's the soldier in black armor who fought against the first god that Gore eventually killed. And so after Gore's first god kill, he takes a Necrosword for himself and ditches the planet, leaving Knull behind, assuming that whoever this guy is dead and is like a nobody. Knull wakes up and he doesn't have his weapon. So for hundreds of years, he's just chilling on this barren wasteland of a planet, which, you know, as we've said before, sucks. Until he gets a revelation. Knull uses his powers to bond with the lesser creatures that are on this wasteland of a planet so that he can pilot them as vessels. And so eventually, over time, Knull gathers a large enough horde to start invading all the different galaxies, taking over various different life forms along the way, including species like that dragon. But unfortunately for Knull, the only planet that was able to stop him was Earth. And this was during the Viking era. And if you remember back when we did our first video of Venom, we saw the symbiote dreaming of a sequence back in the day where where Vikings were being attacked by symbiotes. Well, here it's explained to us. The Vikings were able to call upon Thor, our Thor, guy with hammer, come down to kick some serious symbiote ass. He electrocutes them, basically disconnecting any sort of connection that the symbiotes had with Knull. And since the entire horde was disconnected, they're all getting, separation anxiety, and so they start latching on to random things on Earth, becoming how we view symbiotes. And what were once loyal to Knull 100%, they all commit mutiny and they drown him on his planet. And so basically, Knull is still on his planet. He's trapped by his symbiotes, by his creatures. He's just manifesting himself within this giant dragon because his dragon is still connected to Knull's mind. And one of the creepiest reveals that I think Knull tells Eddie is that the home world, Clintar, yeah, it's really not a planet. It's a bunch of symbiotes collectively entangled into one giant ball, creating a prison for their hive mind. Yeah, I just find that really gross. But cool, good job, Cates. Eventually, Knull ends his speech and informs Eddie that once his dragon finds the missing symbiote parts that he's looking for, he's gonna come back for Knull and free him, and he'll take over the entire galaxy, starting with Earth. But like every villain, he has his moment of downfall when Miles Morales wakes back up and punches him right in the face. Knull's pretty pissed about this, and he's like, alright, well, I'll show you how I'm gonna do this. Let's just begin this annihilation right now. As we see the dragon that Knull is controlling heading back towards Earth. And that wraps up today's video. If you guys like my content, please hit that subscribe button as well as hit the bell symbol so that the world of comics is never missed out. Peace, guys.